Hi, welcome. Today I'm interviewing Mary Beth. Welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
So Mary Beth's going to tell her birth story. And I met Mary Beth at a church conference. It was actually like a women's gathering, right? Mm-hmm. And I gave the testimony about my birth, which is shortly after I had Hannah, my first daughter. I think I had her with me at that event.
Yeah.
And she was only a few months old. So the story was like fresh on my mind. And I was telling the testimony of my pain-free birth and what happened and what God did, and telling women at this women's conference, like, this is possible and you can do it too. And you were sitting in the audience, and I didn't know you yet, but tell me about that experience. Like, what did you get out of that?
So I was young. I was early 20s.
Wow.
Not married. I was dating my husband, my future husband.
Okay.
I was one of maybe 4 girls that hadn't had babies yet. And I just remember, like, when you were speaking, thinking, like, I just always expected that birth would be super painful and horrible. Like, just a horrendous experience from everything I had seen on TV.
Yeah.
And everything I had heard from anyone who had had babies, it was going to be a horrible experience, and it's traumatizing, and you just have to try and get through it.
Yeah. So not like looking forward to it.
No, not looking forward to it. That was one of the things that I was dreading my whole life, was having babies. It really was. And getting my wisdom teeth out when I was a teenager.
Wow.
Yeah. So
what did you take away from that?
I took away that there actually can be another way to have a child. Like, you can actually enjoy it, and it will be hard, but you can actually have, like, a supernatural and pain-free birth.
Yeah. And then, so I remember talking to you later, and you said, like, you just felt like, oh, okay, I can do it. Like, you just accepted it.
Yeah,
like,
I did.
Like, you just grabbed it with your faith, and you're like, okay, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
And then when you got pregnant, I remember sitting down with you at the coffee shop.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
You just, like...
You were pregnant, too, with Juliet.
We were pregnant at the same time. Yeah. So that was with my second, because they're really close. And I remember asking you, like, questions about, like, where are you delivering, what provider are you with, like, about birth. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but you were like, I asked you, like, who's your provider? And you're like, I don't know, like, the people at the hospital or something. And I was like,
I didn't do that much research.
Right. You had done, like, at that point, you're like, you hadn't done any research. You were like a clean slate. And I remember thinking, we got some work to do. Because we were, like, doing some, I was just kind of, like, helping you along the way, like, doing some coaching and mentoring. And then, so at first I thought, okay, we got a lot of work to do, like, figure out who your provider is.
Yeah.
And then I thought, this is actually great, because it's like a blank canvas.
Right.
Like, we get to paint whatever we want on your view of birth, and walking into this and empowering you to, like, see it as this beautiful thing. There was nothing, like, in your bag other than, like, the stuff you'd already gotten rid of.
Right.
Like, that said it was horrible.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, it can be great.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of like a fun opportunity for me to be like, I get to pour into you all this good stuff. Yeah. And walk with you on this journey. And it was really an exciting journey. Tell me about your journey of pregnancy, because this was so powerful with Michael. Your journey of walking out pregnancy.
Yeah. So I actually was pregnant at the same time as one of my coworkers.
Yeah.
And she was really, really sick. She got sick all day. She'd throw up at work. And she'd always complain about how sick she was getting.
Yeah, like every pregnant woman does.
Right, yeah. So I started getting sick.
Yeah.
And I just remember, I think I called you and I asked you.
You did. Yep. You were like 30-something weeks. And up until then, you'd had, like, a great pregnancy, I think.
No.
No, you hadn't?
No.
So you were. Never mind.
I was sick the whole time.
You were? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. We should have been talking more often. But okay, I remember you calling me and you telling me all about, like, this, you getting sick and you were nauseous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I told you about my coworker and how she was sick too, and how it was just, like, something that I just accepted because
that's normal. You're like, that's normal, right, Karen? I was like, yeah, it's normal.
But it doesn't have to be.
But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be for you.
Yeah.
And we prayed.
Yeah.
And we broke it off. And then what happened?
And then I felt better.
Like, how soon?
immediately. Yeah, I remember I would get like maybe a little bit nauseous, like you still feel different when you're pregnant, but...
And then it was just gone.
It was gone.
For the rest of your pregnancy.
Yes. Yeah.
So how long did that last? Like feeling great in your pregnancy? Because that was, like you went like 40 weeks, right?
Right.
So, and you were working on a farm, like doing manual labor.
Yeah.
Up until like your due date.
Right. Yeah.
And
well, yep. I went on maternity leave, I think like a week before I was due, and I had Michael the next two days after I stopped working. So
you were like 9 months pregnant, working
Yes.
on the farm. Your coworkers must have thought you were like crazy. Like, what is this girl doing?
Right. Yeah.
And
they were like, well, you don't have to do that. I'm like, it's fine. I got it.
Yeah.
I'll go for a walk.
Yeah, you're like, I feel great.
Yeah.
Why? I just love that. I was like, I just love that testimony. So like you determined, like, you just kind of set your mind on, oh, I don't have to experience this. And then it all disappeared, all the nausea, all the symptoms.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So yeah, I told you on that phone, I was like, you can feel great up until the end. You're like, oh, okay.
I was like, oh, I thought that.
I thought I was supposed to feel this way.
Yeah.
And then you literally did feel great up until like you had your baby.
Right.
I love it. So let's talk about your labor.
Okay.
And the birth. It started Saturday morning. Tell me what happened.
Can I get graphic?
So like early labor, like you're contracting all day. Were you trying to figure out like, is this real labor or is this like Braxton Hicks? Because it's your first, right?
Right. It started at like 9 a.m. and I remember timing it, and it wasn't that bad, but I knew that like these are what contractions are. Yeah. Because from everything that I had learned, I did a lot of research about like what it was going to feel like. That's what the thing, I was worried about what it was going to feel like. If I could handle it.
Right. Can I handle the pain, all that?
Can I handle the pain?
Yep.
So contractions started at about 9.
And how did they feel? Were they painful at this point?
No. They were never painful.
Wow.
They got harder, but they were never painful.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
I could feel myself like tensing.
Yeah. Like in your uterus and womb. Yep.
I could feel it tense and then release. Like basically how I had learned that it would happen.
Yeah, like the way we talked about. Right. Yeah.
And I timed it, and like from starting at 9 o'clock, it was every 3 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. But it wasn't intense. Yeah. So it went all day.
Okay.
So we just had a normal day.
Yep.
We went over to my in-laws for dinner to celebrate because we closed on our house. Cool. So we went over there for dinner.
Okay.
I had a glass of wine.
That'll help you relax.
Yes, I was very relaxed. And I remember saying to my mother-in-law, I said, this isn't scary, but I could see how people would get scared by it because it's something that's out of your control. Yeah. I said, it's really not that bad. Like, I feel like it wasn't bad because I had already prepared myself mentally for it. Like, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. And I'm like, I could understand how somebody would experience that and panic because something's happening to them that's out of their control. Yeah.
Especially if they're expecting it to be painful and difficult.
And I was just like chill. Like, I could see how this would be scary.
Now, were you wondering still in the back of your head, like, is it going to get worse?
How much harder is it going to get? Yeah.
Yeah.
So my big fear, and we'll get to this like later on in the story, but my big fear was transition. Because I went to a birth class, a natural birth class, and I watched a video of a lady going through transition, and that made me so scared of it because of how, like, she just looked like she was in so much pain, and she was barely moving, and she was just, like, moaning.
So that was the fear in your bag.
Transition was,
yeah.
I was afraid of transition.
Okay. So what happened? When did you go to the hospital?
So we came back home. We watched a movie. And my contractions were a little more intense then. I tried to sleep, but the contractions woke me up. And then we went to bed. My husband slept for a couple hours. And I would wake up with contractions, but I tried to sleep as much as I could. Yeah, I wasn't really sleeping that much. So I think it was like maybe 3. Okay. We went in 3 in the morning.
And then you were in triage. What did you think about that?
So I didn't know that triage existed. I didn't. So when I came in and they put me like in a little bed with like just little curtains dividing me from other people. I was like, is this where I'm going to have my baby? I was scared.
What is this awful
I know.
room?
I'm like, what is this? What is this torture room?
It's never a good place to labor. It's always uncomfortable there.
I know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it existed. That was
Right.
a lack of research on my part. Like, where do you go when you first get to the hospital? Triage. You go to triage. It's a room with a whole bunch of beds near each other and little curtains.
Yeah. And they were trying to place a vein, you said, and it like wasn't working because
Yes.
you were dehydrated. Like,
Yep. I was very dehydrated.
yeah. So that's not fun.
I think that was before they checked me in. Though.
Okay.
They checked me, and I was 3 centimeters.
Okay.
The midwife, and she basically was like, well, either you can go home or you can walk the halls and see if it progresses. So I'm like, well, I mean, I don't want to go home. I want to have the baby.
So you walked the halls.
So we walked the halls for, I don't know, maybe it was an hour. It felt like forever. That was my hardest labor, was when I was walking the halls, because I was so stressed out and I was afraid that I was going to be sent back home. And I had a midwife that I wasn't particularly fond of.
So she was kind of rude to you.
I feel like she was like excited to show me that it's going to get so much harder than it was at that point. And that made it even harder for me. It kind of like put fear in me that like I really can't do this.
Wow.
You know?
So did she make you feel like disempowered?
Yes, she did. Yeah. Wow. And she kept mentioning, well, this is your first child. It's going to get so much more intense. We have drugs if you need them. I'm like, but I don't want. I want to do it without drugs.
So how did that change? Did that change your labor and how you felt it?
Yeah, and it actually, that was the only time that it was maybe a little bit painful. If that was the hardest labor, was when I was between 3 and 4 centimeters in triage.
When you had the midwife who was like weird.
Yeah, even at the very end of labor, that was the hardest contractions that I had.
That is just mind blowing to me that like that hurt more at 3 centimeters than like transition.
Yeah.
Because of that mind-body connection and the fear and the doubt that she put in your heart. That's crazy. Like,
yeah, I remember walking the halls and I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this.
She made that's why it's so important to have a provider we trust and that believes in us. Yeah. Because that's the effect that people on our birth team can have on us. Yes. And we don't even know it.
Yeah. Oh, and there was a lady in triage right next to me. And I remember she was like, she sounded like she was in a lot of pain. And it sounded to me like she was dying. It scared me.
Yeah.
And
so
the midwife,
what'd she say?
The midwife said to me, she said, you're in early labor and she's in active labor. It's going to get like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fun. Like that's
thank you for the wise words.
Here's some more fear for you. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened after that? Like did they give you a room? Did you get a new midwife?
So after I walked the halls, she checked me again, and I think I was 4 centimeters, maybe 5. So she said that I could check into a room.
Okay.
And that's when the nurse came in, and I was extremely dehydrated, and they collapsed 3 veins trying to get an IV in so that I could get some liquids.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So drink your water in labor,
Drink your water in labor. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
It was bad. I mean, I don't know. I didn't feel like it, so I didn't.
Yeah.
So I was extremely dehydrated. They won't be able to find a vein.
So you need the IV if you're not. Yeah. Yes. If you're not going to drink the water, you'll get the IV.
Yes.
One way or another, stay hydrated, because when you're dehydrated, that'll make it hurt more. And
right.
Dehydration's not good for any muscle, including the uterus. So.
Right. Well, after I got a whole bag of fluids, I felt so much better.
Good.
I had to pee every 3 seconds, but
but it was worth it.
But it was worth it because I felt so much better. Your muscles you can feel like the hydration going to them.
Labor just works better when you're healthy and hydrated.
Right. So I got checked into a room. They gave me a room with a bathtub with jets.
Ooh, nice.
So I'm pretty sure I just went right into the tub.
That sounds great. That is like my go-to.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said you were sleeping in there?
I was sleeping.
In the tub. Mm-hmm. So you obviously got to rest and relax and kind of find your
because I hadn't slept the night before.
Yep.
And I was so exhausted from my triage experience. So I'm like, I'm going to go to sleep.
Yeah, all that adrenaline in your veins, and good for you. So.
And I felt contractions in the bathtub, but I did not feel them that strongly.
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. Like your body
So,
knows what you need. It gives you the break. And
Right.
the water is great for
It is.
For that.
And I love baths anyways. So
And then did you get a new midwife?
I did. Yeah,
that?
she left shortly after I checked into my room. And I had a midwife that I absolutely loved. She was awesome.
And how did she help you?
She just came in and asked what I needed, and I said, can I have some popsicles? She gave me a popsicle, and then I asked for another and another and another, so, yeah.
I would never think to ask for popsicles. Like, I would really like a popsicle.
Yeah, can I have a popsicle?
That's awesome.
I don't know how many popsicles I ate. But, yeah, she just came and checked on me periodically. She said, do you need anything?
Nice.
So, and I didn't need anything other than popsicles.
I'm simple.
Yeah.
I'm a simple girl.
My husband was there outside of the tub. He was sitting in a horribly uncomfortable chair. Yeah. I was more comfortable than he was when I was in the bathtub.
Is he like complaining? You're like, oh, stop.
He was trying to sleep, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. He didn't say anything, but I could tell because it was just like a little chair.
So you were just kind of rocking it by yourself in the tub.
Oh, yeah. I didn't need him. He was sleeping in the chair. I mean, of course I need him, but I didn't need him at that point.
That time. So what happened like with transition?
So I can't remember how long I was in the tub for. I was in there for maybe a couple of hours. Okay. And I got out, and I thought that I had stopped labor. So I told my midwife.
It slows down in the tub. And that's normal to like when you're in the tub, it does slow down.
Yeah.
And so.
I told her, I said, I think I might have stopped it. She's like, yeah, maybe we should stay away from the tub. Yeah. So she checked me, and I was 7 centimeters.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I got back in the tub.
You're like, all right, never mind that. It's obviously working.
Yeah.
Good.
So I got back in the tub, and I can't remember how long I was in there again. Maybe an hour.
Okay.
I got back out. I was 9 centimeters.
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then I stayed in the bed after that. I was still pretty tired.
Yep.
So
you slept through most of active labor.
Yeah, like. I did. I couldn't sleep through early labor, but I slept through active labor.
For you. That's the way to do it. Yeah. Awesome. So
then I labored in the bed. I didn't feel like I had researched different ways to like labor and push and everything, but I didn't feel like it. So I just laid there. Yeah.
You're like, this is what I need.
And I was talking to the nurse and I was talking to the midwife, and
did they like believe you were in labor yet? Because they didn't believe it like earlier.
Yeah, they did. Well, when they checked me, from how I was acting, they didn't.
They were like, "Oh, you're," because you were chatty.
I was. I remember saying to them. So I was telling them a story about my dad. I'm like, I gotta tell my dad not to post until I'm ready. Right. And then I'd have a contraction. I'd stop. And then once it was done, I would be like, because my dad posts everything on Facebook
and you're like 9 centimeters.
Yeah, the midwife said to me, she goes, we're kind of in shock right now because most women aren't talking at this point.
Right. Yeah, that is unusual.
Yeah.
And I remember you told me, like, you were like laughing at this stage, like
I was
telling them jokes, and they're like, what is going on with her? Which I love that. So it sounds like you didn't even have a discernible transition.
No, I didn't. No.
Like all that fear, and then it didn't even, all of a sudden you're like 10 centimeters and
right.
fully dilated.
Yeah, they checked me. They said I was 10 centimeters. And I was like, when am I going to go through transition? Because I was so scared of it.
Yeah.
It was like this big, scary thing.
Right.
And they said, I think you've already gone through it.
You talked your way, laughed your way through it.
Yeah.
Awesome. How did that feel when you realized, like, oh, I went through the hardest part I was most afraid of?
It was pretty exhilarating.
Yeah.
Because then I knew all I have left is to push.
Wow.
Yeah. I've gotten through the scariest part in my mind. So all I have left is to push. And how close am I to meeting a baby that I created? I grew in my body.
So did you get like a birth high when you realized that?
Yeah, definitely.
I got the same thing happen to me. It was like this realization like, oh, I'm doing the hardest part right now.
Right.
And it's working. Yeah. Like that's awesome. That's so empowering.
Yeah.
I love that. So what did contractions feel like? Like you're 9-10 centimeters. Did you just like not feel it? Like what?
No, I did. Once I was in the bed, I felt it.
Okay.
They were intense, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't handle. And I went into it saying that to myself. And just from the things that I had learned, like it's like a wave. You just kind of like let it come over you.
Yeah.
And then it goes.
Yeah.
So that's how I handled it. I didn't, the only thing that I did to handle contractions at the end of that labor was breathe. And just like breathe in and out slowly. It wasn't painful. It was intense and it was hard, but it wasn't painful.
Like did it take all your, like you said, you had to stop talking.
Yes.
And like
during the
concentrate.
contraction.
Yep.
I had to focus. Yeah. So I focused and then I would come back outward. Yeah. I focused inward and then I'd come back outward.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. So you said, how about when they checked you, did they check you to say like you're 10 centimeters, it's time to push? Like,
No.
No?
No, they said I'm 10 centimeters and I think they might have been getting ready to leave because I wasn't ready to push.
Oh, really?
And I said, well, what can we do? And she said, well, we can break your water. It'll probably make it progress more because my water hadn't broken at that point.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let's do that.
Okay. What was that like?
I mean, it was just...
We just broke it.
Yeah, it didn't hurt or anything.
Did that change your labor?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think it was shortly after that I felt the urge to push.
Okay.
But I remember telling them, they were about to leave, and I remember telling them, like, I don't think you guys should leave. I think I have to push.
Okay. You were feeling it, like, start to come up.
Yeah.
So they broke your water. Then you started to feel the urge to push.
Yes.
And what was pushing like? How did that feel for you?
That was intense. I didn't do as much research on pushing.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people. Well, mostly you.
and that
on
was before
contractions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that was before I'd done a lot of research on pushing too.
Yeah.
So was that, how did that feel?
It was a lot harder than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
The one book that I read, a lot of the stories where the women said they liked pushing because they felt like they
could do
they
something.
contributed instead of like just kind of experiencing it.
Yeah.
So I kind of went into it thinking like it's going to be easy. Like I'll like it because other people did. So I didn't really prepare myself for it.
Mm-hmm. It's intense.
Yeah, if I could go back, I would have prepared myself for it and known more what to expect. And I would have forced myself to get off my back and not push on my back.
Yeah, because that does intensify
I felt a lot of pressure on my tailbone when he was in the birth canal.
Yeah, for sure.
Between contractions, I didn't have relief between contractions at that point. So that was the worst part, I feel like, for me. There was no, like, break.
No break. Mm-hmm. And were they directing you to push, like...
They were helping me. I wasn't listening, though.
I was a bad patient.
Yeah, at that point.
So were you, like, holding your breath and, like, pushing them down?
I don't remember if I was holding my breath. I remember I was yelling, and I wasn't supposed to do that because I'm supposed to focus on the pushing and not on the yelling.
Yeah. So how long were you pushing?
It was 36 minutes.
Okay, that's still pretty good for first-time mom.
I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I pushed when they told me not to. Like, when they told me to stop, I would still push because I wanted it to be over.
Yeah. I could relate to that.
So.
Yeah. And you said you ended up with, like, a tear, too.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough when you're pushing, especially when they're like, no, stop.
But, like, I just kept pushing when they told me to stop. Listen to your midwife.
That's a good time to listen when they're crowning, like, don't push too hard because you want to preserve that perineum.
Right.
But now, how did that make you feel? Like, what were you saying to yourself then during pushing?
They had told me, like, in the middle of it, that it's normal for first-time moms to push for a couple of hours. And I remember thinking to myself, I cannot do this for a couple of hours.
Like,
so I think that's why I kind of, like, maybe didn't listen to them, which resulted in the tear. But it was a lot shorter pushing than...
You're like, listen, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it my way, get out of the way.
Right. Just let me do it. Fix me up later.
That's one way to get it over with.
And then they said... well, we can see his head. Actually, we didn't know he was a boy at that point, but we can see the baby's head.
Did that motivate you more?
It did. Yeah, it did. And they were surprised at how quick it was.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying, like, maybe 1 or 2 more pushes, and they think he's going to come out.
Awesome.
So.
That's great. So what happened? How did you feel when he came out?
Oh, my gosh. It was the best feeling I've ever had in my life.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. So I remember them telling me that it was going to be 1 or 2 more pushes. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so close to meeting this baby, finding out if it's a boy or girl. It's like we're having a baby.
You're so close.
So close. And I'd been dreaming about that moment. Pretty sure I had already started crying. My husband was crying. Oh. And I was in like the last push before the baby came out, and the midwife said, "Do you want to catch it?"
Wow.
I said, "Sure." So I reached down. I don't remember. I think I reached down like this, and of course she helped me catch him.
Yeah.
And I caught him.
Caught your own baby.
Yep.
That's amazing.
She helped me bring him immediately right up to my chest.
How did that make you feel?
It was awesome. It was awesome, and I can't imagine. I mean, I've heard stories of women having babies, and the doctors like take them away. It's like I can't even imagine that happening because I had the experience my first time with my first baby of like catching him and putting him right to my chest.
Oh my gosh, you must have felt like so powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like the best feeling in the world, that birth high, all that oxytocin.
Right.
Like you're just crying. Like, oh, I love it.
Yeah, and I remember saying like, I can't believe I just did that. I think I said it like 50 times.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just did that.
Oh, wow.
And I think my husband thinks that labor is easier than it actually is because of how chill I was.
Is he like, what are women complaining about?
I know, like my wife was fine.
You're like, honey, don't say that to anyone. Oh, and then you did have a 3rd-degree tear.
I did.
So they had to stitch you up. What was that like?
It was worse than any of the other.
Worse than the labor?
Yeah, it was worse than the labor because I felt like I could feel it. They numbed me, but that was horrible because I don't like needles. Yeah. And then they stitched me, and I felt like I could feel it. And the midwife actually told me that I did better during labor than being stitched up.
Yeah, you said they're like, what? You're such a wuss. Put your butt down.
Yeah, I kept lifting my butt up. She's like, you need to put your butt down.
You're like, this girl's crazy.
I'm like, are you guys still proud of me?
Wow. So you got to hold your baby for like a long time.
Yeah.
And breastfeeding, like you said, that he latched right away.
On. Yeah.
How did you feel like in the days and months after giving birth?
Oh my gosh. It was surreal. Wow. I remember I kept asking myself, like, did I really just do that?
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
And thinking like that, I can't believe like how much psychological it is. I really, really prepared myself, and I got together with you a handful of times, and one of my other friends who's a doula a handful of times, and just picked your brains and really like prepared myself mentally for it, and I actually did it. Like, I can't believe I actually just did this.
So God like answered all your prayers, like what you were hoping for.
Definitely.
What would you say to other women who are like in that battle, like first time moms, don't know what it's going to be like, you know, doubting themselves? Like,
I would say find yourself a Karen.
Someone who believes in them.
Right. Someone who believes in them, and
or a good doula.
A good doula who knows that birth doesn't have to be a medical thing.
Yeah.
It can be like a natural thing that your body does. Not your doctor helped you birth a baby. It's you birthed a baby. Your doctor was there in case of any.
It's take your power back.
Right.
That's what we do as women.
Yeah, and I would say don't be afraid of it. And it doesn't have to be like what you've heard it to be.
Wow.
What you see in the movies. Even like what your own mother, you know, what your own mother has told you birth is going to be like. It doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah. And I remember talking to you after you had the baby, and you were telling me this story. Like, you were like, I was laughing at like 9 centimeters, 10 centimeters, and I felt so amazing afterwards, and it worked. And I was like, for me, this was like the early stages of me developing this training and this course. And for me, what that did was I was like, oh my gosh, this is teachable.
Right.
Like, because when you heard me at the conference, you said later, you were like, well, that's Karen Welton. Like, she's spiritual. Like, she might have these experiences, you know, and she had a pain-free birth or a supernatural birth, but I'm just like normal Mary Beth. I don't know if that'll happen to me.
Right.
And then it did.
And it did.
Because it happened, because that's just our bodies as women. Like, we were made for this.
Right. Yeah.
But I just loved your story because you actually, you didn't realize it, but you encouraged me as much as I encouraged you.
Wow.
And you built my faith to believe that this is something that's attainable for any woman.
Right.
It's not just for like the super spiritual or, you know, I don't know, some special group of women. Like this is how each of us were created and what we were born for. And it proved to me like, anybody can catch this. Anybody can grab a hold of this with their faith and prepare their hearts and their minds to like achieve a beautiful labor and birth, and that I could actually just give this away to anybody.
Right.
So I have to thank you for
Yay.
that because honestly, like part of the reason this whole course exists is because of you. Like
really?
you have like a piece to play in this. So thank you.
Aww.
So I hope that encouraged you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Aww.